Hi guys, today I explain interference of light. What I meant by interference? Interference is superposition. Superposition uh, of light waves. Superposition of light waves produced from two coherent sources. I mean when I have two coherent source, coherent Coherent means same frequency, same amplitude, same phase. Prefer get one source and get screen with two slides to produce two waves like two source to make sure ان two waves coherent source, same frequency, same amplitude and same phase. Okay, when I have two coherent source, each source produce waves. The superposition between the two waves is called interference to produce dark franks and light frank. Light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, and so on. Dark franks and or dark area and bright area. To study the interference of light, we have to carry out the following experiment. Double slit experiment or Thomas-Young experiment. Scientific idea of this experiment, interference of light. But I do this experiment to another function, to determine the wavelength of for any monochromatic light source. What's meant by monochromatic light source? Monochromatic light source, I mean light has one color or has limited of wavelengths, value of wavelengths. Each I know a white color or white light consists of 7 colors, rainbow or a spectrum, color spectrum. When I use monochromatic light, I mean I use one color from these colors 7. يعني استخدم red color, yellow, blue, and so on. I prefer in this experiment red color. Why? Because red color it has longest wavelength. Longest wavelength. طب أنا محتاجة longest wavelength ليه؟ هنقول at the end of the experiment. But now monochromatic light means wavelength has one value. Light, its wavelength has one value. Okay, and put inside in front of this source of light first screen with a rectangular slide or with a rectangular hole S lies as a distance from the source to produce cylindrical waves, and put another screen has two slides or double is called double slide screen. Double slide screen. Okay, double slide screen because it has two slide or two holes يعني. Why? Because this screen acts as two source to produce interference or superposition between two waves. يبقى two slides دول act as two source of light. I mean coherent sources of light to produce two waves identical, and two waves دول superposition together or hang each other, هيحضنوا بعض to make الفرانكس البرايت and الدارك فرانكس. Okay. طيب the distance between the two slides is called d small. Distance between the two slides d small. And distance between the double slide screen and the observation screen اللي هي السكرين اللي احنا we can observe عليها البرايت والدارك فرانكس, الديستنس دي is called r capital. And the distance between centers of two successive frank, centers of two successive bright frank or center of two successive dark frank equal delta y. bright frank والbright frank اللي بعدها يبقى delta y. two successive bright fringe delta y or two successive dark fringe delta y. These fringes appears on observation screen, okay? Lo delta y equal lambda r over d. I can measure the distance between bright fringe and successive bright fringe. Distance between two successive fringes, bright or dark. I can measure this distance. Okay, we can measure the distance between the center of bright fringe to the center of bright fringe, delta y, by ruler, by meter. And I can measure the distance between two slides, d, by ruler, and measure the distance between the double slide screen and the observation screen, r. So delta y equal lambda r over d, and delta y given will r. I can measure the r and d, so can calculate or determine the wavelength. If I use red color, has largest length, longest wavelength. Red color I prefer used in this experiment, red color. Why? Because red has longest wavelength, and the wavelength is directly proportional to delta y. Same line between them equal. يبقى wavelength with delta y directly proportional. So the delta y is large also. And we can see interference more clearly. كل ما الدلتا y increase الانترفيرنس هيبقى more clearly. عشان كده احنا prefer الcolor red. اوكي. كمان السنتر بتاع الانترفيرنس دايما بيبقى bright. ليه central fringe in the young experiment are always illuminated? Because it is produced as a result of constructive interference. I mean path difference equal 0. Path difference equal 0. In the next video, I explain the difference between constructive and destructive interference. Finally, this experiment has many functions. At first, study the interference, or I can know or see the interference by this experiment. I can see this experiment explain the interference. And the mean function of this experiment determine the wavelength from this law. We can measure delta y and r and d to calculate the wavelength of light. يبقى أنا بستخدم monochromatic light كمان عشان أقدر أعمل determine للwavelength بتاعه by this experiment. Thanks and goodbye.